Well, hey there, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining me today for the Confident Sober Women podcast. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. And like I mentioned, I have this weird cold and it's attacked my voice box, so I sound a little different than usual. Maybe it's fun for some people. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm gonna turn the mic over to you, let you share a little bit more about your story, and then we're gonna chat.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Michelle Risser. I'm a therapist in Central Ohio. I'm a mom. I've been sober for 24 years. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm not sure where to start. Where should I start as far as my story? Do you want like the whole, like an
I was born
overview
in
of the, yeah,
1975
like
to
I'm
two
51
loving.
years, right, exactly. Like
I'm
how
just
much of the
kidding.
story do you want?
I mean, I just think like if you want to say a little bit about, kind of what your history was with substances, a little bit about maybe kind of like what happened, how you got sober, and like a lot more about like what's been happening since then.
Okay, yeah. So on my father's side, there is a long history of alcoholism. And my father was an alcoholic, and he also had several mental illnesses. He had schizoaffective bipolar disorder, which is, really scary when you're a kid. And he was untreated. And so I always was told by lots of different people in my life, you need to be careful with alcohol.
Hmm.
I was told this by family members, even my teacher. When I was in high school, I went on a school trip to Germany, and she's like, you need to be careful with alcohol because we were allowed to drink on that trip. And so when I started drinking a little bit in high school, but it really took off
Well, hey there,
in
Michelle. Thank you
college.
so much for joining me today for the Confident Sober Women podcast. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, and so sorry.
That's
I
okay.
will fix that. Pause, restart.
Okay. So gosh, where was I?
Your dad
Uh,
and everyone told you not to drink as you
oh
were in
yeah,
Germany.
okay. Yeah, okay. I went to Germany in high school on a school trip, and even there my teacher was saying like, Michelle, I think you need to be careful with alcohol. I don't think alcohol is your friend. So I always had that kind of in the back of my mind. And I even kind of thought to myself, I'm going to basically get away with this as long as I can, very alcoholic way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in my 20s, so I tried to go to college at the University of Kentucky. I ended up, you know, doing an academic withdrawal. I basically flunked out more or less, came home, went to the community college. I really, really wanted an education. And here I am. I'm trying to go to school and I can't do it.
Mm.
I'm like, I came back, I went to the community college off and on. Finally, I got into Ohio State. And once again, like, I really felt committed to getting a degree. But yeah, if I had an 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock class, forget it. I wasn't going. I waited tables. We would close at 11. We'd go out to the bars. We would stay up till, drinking till 4 or 5 in the morning. And I somehow thought that I could get up at 7. I thought that I could go to bed at 5 and get up at 7 and make it to class because that's what people did. That's what, my coworkers, we did stuff like that. We would party all night and go to work on no sleep. So I guess I thought it would work. It didn't work. I ended up getting, I don't know, a D or something in one of my classes. And I just said, I am sick of this. I'm sick of myself. I'm sick of not being able to reach my goals. I still had that voice in the back of my head that was like, be careful, you have alcoholism in your family. And I was starting to have weird things happen. Like a big turning point for me was I was in the shower and all of a sudden I saw all these sparkly white stars. It was almost like an explosion of,
Mm.
and later someone told me that was probably something to do with blood pressure, dropping rapidly or something, but
Right.
I had been trying to stop drinking at that point, and I would always make it 3 days. On the third day, I'd be on a bar stool. No
Mm.
matter how committed, no matter how much I wanted to stop, I would be on that bar stool after 3 days. So at the age of 26, I did get into a 12-step program and I got sober. Um, it took, let's see, I made it 9 days the first time. and ended up drinking. And after that 9 days, and after that, I don't even want to call it a relapse because I wasn't even really sober yet. I was still
Mhm.
trying to get sober, but it just didn't work anymore. Like I never got any relief. I just was sitting there drinking by myself, feeling miserable. So I said, okay. So from that point on, I have not had a drink or any kind of mood altering substances. I was very, very involved in AA through the first couple of decades of my sobriety. Less so now. I still go about once a week or so. Um, but yeah, that's mostly my story. Working through with the childhood that I had, with the father that I had.
Mhm. That's nice. Thank you so much for sharing and for your honesty and vulnerability. I think most of us can relate to a lot of what you shared. Maybe not exactly. Not all of us have parents with active alcoholism or major mental health disorders, but a lot of us do. And but mostly what's always important, I think, when we're sharing our stories of any kind, whether it's around recovery, mental health, or maybe it's a professional situation or just parenting or whatever, relatability is the biggest key to all of this. And whether it's exact or not, most of us can relate to the feelings that other people are sharing around that topic. And that's one of the things that I love about kind of this work and just recovery communities in general is that, yeah, a lot of us are not the same. Like every once in a while, if you go to meetings long enough or you hang out, you'll eventually, hear your story or whatever. But, oftentimes not so much, but you can relate to, the desperation and the obsession and compulsion and the desire to be seen and heard or validated, all these kinds of things. And the things that we really didn't get when you're growing up in a way like you described. So, thank you for sharing that. So it sounds like you got sober in AI, which is the same thing I did. I'm a little bit behind you, I think. But that's really all we had back then. So
Yeah.
most of us used, rehab and AA or 12-step programs to get sober, get and stay sober. And now, this has morphed into, a lot of amazing things in modern day recovery. We have Quit Lit and podcasts and Zoom meetings and, non 12-step recovery platforms and, and so many cool things. And I love that about kind of what's happening in the evolution of our society. And with that comes all kinds of other things like, you know, interpretation around what's best or what's not great and language and what do we call ourselves and why we don't like that. And, and to me, all of that is kind of just noise, it creates a lot of distraction from the real matter at hand, which is, we are a people who cannot consume substances like other people. I would argue, and from the research done by lots of people now that both of us probably know, no one should consume substances because it's their poison for everybody. Um, However, we are a part of a group of people who can't do that and function in society. So my main mission in life, probably similar to yours, is to normalize not drinking and to bring hope to others about how to thrive in long-term recovery, which is what you've been doing, right? So after you got sober, you were pretty young, like me. I would turn 27 in rehab, and then I was already married, and so I was repairing that, and then I had 3 kids in 4 years, and I went on about my life and my career and such. Can you share a little bit more about what those first, maybe the first decade or so, and even beyond, has been like for you in that transformation? Because that early sobriety stuff is really challenging for a variety of reasons. Sometimes people have, legal stuff to deal with. Sometimes people have all of us have, mental health stuff to deal with and thought patterns and, things like that that we have to repair and really need to learn how to live. I always used to say I needed to relearn how to live, but I've changed that now to think I needed to learn how to live because there's no relearning. I didn't really know. I didn't know how to take care of myself properly. I didn't know how to do proper skincare or feed myself 3 times a day or not exercise for 3 hours a day. I just or have conversations, outside of my mouth with my husband or people important to me. So maybe share a little bit about what that was like for you. And, I would imagine that, I don't throw these words around lightly. I know you're a therapist as well, but words like trauma
Mhm.
and you know, abuse and things like this, we don't use lightly, but they are often very much a part of our stories, most particularly when you're being raised in a family where addiction is present and also for sure severe mental health. So kind of curious about that and what that, to the point that you're willing to share what that kind of looked like for you as you kind of emerged into recovery in the first decade or so.
Yeah, so you're right. I had to learn how to kind of function. My mom and I left my father when I was about 11 years old. And, I'm an only child of a single mom. And, she absolutely did the best she could. She worked two jobs, she worked really hard, but I spent a lot of time kind of raising myself on ramen noodles and the Brady Bunch reruns, like a lot of us Gen Xers did, honestly. We're the latchkey kids. And um, there were a lot of things like I just didn't know. I didn't know anything about finances or um, even like bills. When I was still drinking, I wouldn't even think about paying a bill until I got the shut off notice. Like I just saw it as like, oh, I got time. Once I got the shut off, I was like, okay, cool, now I need to pay it. Like that was just my norm. I didn't care about things like credit or so that's been part of my journey is like repairing my credit, learning how to deal with money and
Yeah.
finances, um, getting my own help for my mental health. And really, yes, I had a ton of trauma as a child, but I didn't really get help until 2013 when my family and I were in a bad car accident and we were hit by a drunk driver
Mm.
in the middle of the afternoon on a
Ironic,
Saturday.
right?
Yeah, it was a horrific accident. We rolled,
Mm,
we landed upside down. My 4-year-old daughter was in the car.
mm,
And, what's interesting is of all the people in the car, I'm the only one that developed PTSD. And we know now that's probably because I had a prior trauma history. Prior trauma history is a huge risk factor
right.
for future PTSD. So,
Mm.
yeah, I had full on PTSD with flashbacks and nightmares and intrusive thoughts and sounds and, the whole deal. And I went and got EMDR and it just was life changing, you know? And I went and became an EMDR therapist myself. I'm now a certified EMDR therapist as well as a consultant. So, yeah, that was a big turning point, that car accident. I remember I felt like I was looking at a fork in the road. So 2013, I got sober in 99, so I would have been 14 years sober. And I just remember looking down this crossroads and thinking, okay, I'm gonna go one of two ways. I'm gonna either heal and continue on with my life, or I am gonna go down the tubes. Basically, I'm gonna just I'm gonna start drinking again. I'm gonna, bury myself in donuts and sugar and like depression and like I that was a real option at that point. So what's funny is I used to run. I don't run anymore. But I used to run half marathons.
Yeah.
And when we were hit by that drunk driver, it was the day of a half marathon. My husband and I had run a half marathon, came home, got a shower, went to lunch, and we got hit on the way back. So yeah, I don't recommend a half marathon and a car accident in the same day.
No, no.
Um, but when I was looking at that fork in the road, we had signed up for a 10K, and we used to run a lot of races together as a family. And our car accident was in May, the 10K was in June. I ran that thing. I decided, okay, I'm gonna live. I'm gonna fight. I ran that thing. I cried the entire time. I found out afterwards that I ran it with four broken ribs after I had a CT scan. So like that was a turning point in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
So
That's
and then
incredible.
another
I was a long distance runner for many years, my husband and I both. So I've run several marathons and several
mhm.
half marathons. So I totally get the impact of um, the implications of what it means to, work hard to train for that and like you kind of are obsessed with it for a while and then wow, to have that experience and then go through with it. That says a lot about, kind of who you are as like your general makeup and character as a person. Like you're just like kind of a stick-to-itiveness,
I
stick to
am.
itness person, like we're just gonna persevere. Um,
Which is not always a great thing.
no, right.
That's been really one of my things that I've been working on in my own mental health journey is like, when do you stop? Like running a half marathon with 4 broken ribs might not be a great thing. Like, I didn't give myself permission to say it's okay to take care of yourself. I always had to do more, be more, perform. So the only way I knew to move forward was to go out and run.
Yeah.
That was the 10K that I ran with the 4 broken ribs. But yeah, and then my next big, huge turning point was in 2020 when I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. And I had to go
Oh,
through chemo, surgery, and radiation during COVID while working as a therapist
mm,
and being a mom.
yeah. Wow.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's huge. And I mean, this is life, right? I mean, this is the stuff of life. I mean, we're all kind of humaning out here, without any kind of guidebook, except for maybe a few things, but and we don't have any clue what's going to come our way at any time. And so, that's why having tools in our toolbox and having, kind of a long term relationship with ways to regulate our nervous system, ways to regulate and manage our emotions, ways to stay sober and normalize not drinking, why that's so important, because we just never know at any given turn. And that's how I live my life today. I mean, I just kind of that's the only way I have inner peace for me is to just know like I really have zero idea. I mean, I make my plans. I have my routines, my predictable little life, and I do the things, but I generally know always in the back of my mind that I just don't know what's going to go on today or any day. And so I think having that kind of perspective is helpful in a way. And it doesn't go to an extreme for me. Like I don't sit around and like not do stuff. Like I don't live in fear, and just not do things, but I also do have a very healthy, I think, understanding of the nature of life and that and the nature of literally that we just really don't have much control over anything. I can control like what I put in and on my body and a little bit about my thoughts, sort of, and then what I say maybe, but a lot of the other stuff it's really not in our control. And you mentioned EMDR. I'm also an EMDR therapist. My audience knows that. They know I love, love, love EMDR therapy so much. It's so powerful. It is the closest thing we have to a miracle for healing our brains at the molecular level. And it does give us the opportunity to rewrite these stories, right? To clear out those neural pathways that were created by trauma that was not processed by our brains properly, and then rewrite them with much more positive beliefs and leave them in the front part of our brain so that we can function much better, right? And so we
Hmm.
can relieve ourselves of those PTSD symptoms and then not be re-triggered in the future. I'm also now trained in neurofeedback therapy. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's another neurological modality that literally uses electrodes on your brain to train your brain waves and really change your brain as well using positive feedback from the electrodes. And it's pretty amazing. So I'm super excited to introduce that to my community and world because it's an at-home program, so you can do it yourself. You're guided by a practitioner, but you can, do it anytime you want, whenever you want, and
Hmm.
it's pretty awesome. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's amazing.
yeah, thanks. So super excited about it, but I like to mention it and like highlight it a little bit more because that is one way that you and I both, and many people we know and we've worked with, have decided to work on their trauma,
Hmm.
which by the way, we all have this. I always like to say that too. Some people, especially people in our age, sometimes will be like, well, I don't have any trauma. Nothing really bad. We all have it. It's just that it comes in different forms and different levels. Um, we've worked with people to help them do that to begin to heal their brains at that molecular level and really get that um change in their brain chemistry that talk therapy just can't quite provide. So I love that for you, and I'm wondering if, you know, once we do that work, because I think of recovery maybe you do as like a layered approach, right? Like sometimes we use 12 step, sometimes we add in like therapy, and then we add in nutrition, wellness, and complementary modalities and Reiki and whatever else. And so it's a layered approach. But as we start to do that, you know, um, at some point, at some point, hopefully, in that emotional sobriety journey, when we stay sober for a longer time, we begin to latch on and understand how to manage our emotions. And then not just the management of the emotions, meaning in the moment, like knowing what it is, why is it, and like how do we change it or remove it, but also then in our physical body, that experience of the emotion which you were alluding to, in our nervous system, in our physical being, because we know from research too that our bodies hold trauma differently than our brains do. So like what is your experience maybe personally, and then also, in your work, maybe we can work in some examples, like how do we do this? So like how do we manage our nervous systems and our emotions in this way?
Yeah, so one of the best tools that I have really is a meditation practice. And when I am doing it regularly, it's like night and day difference. Um, and I don't do it perfectly by any means. In fact, I really need to get back to doing it consistently, but that allows me to even be able to tune into my body.
Yeah.
So many times, it's almost like a cliche with trauma therapists. Where do you feel it in your body? So many people don't even know. What do you mean in my body? You know?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to really flex that muscle of being able to tune into your body. And one of the best tools that I have, say that I'm upset about something, I'm angry, something's bothering me. I can say, okay, stop, do a scan. Where is it in my body? Maybe it's tightness in my chest, maybe it's hot on the back of my neck. And
Hmm.
then I can address that at the body level. So I will literally put an ice pack on the back of my neck. I will, do some slow breathing and try to, help my chest relax, try to
Hmm.
help my um my breathing slow down, and then that can kick on your parasympathetic nervous system and help you kind of regulate. And so I will literally turn to my body to try to regulate when I'm out of sorts.
Hmm.
You can't think your way out of it. That's my experience. You're upset, something's bothering you, you're not going to figure it out. You got to get yourself regulated first because your prefrontal isn't even online. It's the thinking part of your brain is out to lunch. You're in lizard mode and
I love how we have like the same language. Um, excuse me, I always say that like your frontal lobe is offline.
yeah.
And I use that, regularly in my own home, right? Where I'm just like, I kind of feel like you just like went off. And what happens when that, for the rest of the audience, is when your prefrontal cortex is where your logical brain, your cognitive center is, when you go offline because that back part, your hippocampus and reptilian part is activated in fight or flight. When that's taking over, you can no longer use your frontal lobe at the level that you are used to. So that fight or flight starts to take over, and that's why we have like things like anxiety, right? So we get
Mhm.
anxiety and then even into panic. That's how we start to develop into that panic mode, because that frontal cortex where we can think and reason has sort of shifted off, and you're now in like complete fight or flight where you're really starting to catastrophize and use your words to create a story that may or may not be true. Most likely it's not true. It's not rational. But it's based out of a feeling. And so now you're just doing even more work to get rid of that cognitive ability. And so you're right. And you can, I mean, it's very, very, very hard to use any kind of thinking modality in that way,
Mhm.
right? So you're so right, Michelle. Like when that's happening, especially if you do struggle with anxiety, that's usually the first response, right? You're suddenly, your body is telling you, maybe you're sick to your stomach, or your chest is tight, and you're nervous, or you're like, I need to escape, I got to get out of here. Those are your signals, right? And so that's your body saying, oh, wow, we are heading down the wrong path. And so you're so right. Like whatever we can add in to begin to like bring our attention or our focus back. Now, and this can be very formal, like you're saying, like put the ice pack on. It can be literally, step into a meditation. You could put one on that's specific to your body. There's a lot of somatic material available. It can be breath work. It also can be like super simple, really focused, fast, and kind of private. Like breath work is so great because you
Mhm.
can do that anywhere you are and no one really knows you're doing it. you can do like a sort of a peaceful place visualization, like where you take yourself to your kind of peaceful place and you walk yourself through all your senses. What do you see, feel, taste, and hear here? And then kind of begin to calm your mind and body down as you're breathing through that. I mean, so these things are available to us.
Mhm.
Um, what I hope that, a lot of us can learn to, and you can tell me what your experience is with this too, like we can learn to use our thinking brain, and this is kind of how I teach around eliminating negative thinking patterns is, really begin to, you have to begin to know, you have to go through the whole process. Like, you have to inventory yourself and understand what your thinking patterns are, where they start, why they start, how they show up for you. But then you can slip into like that gentle shift away from whatever that negative thought is, right? So if something happens and now you're like, oh my God, there I go again. I'm such a failure. I can't do anything right. I always forget stuff. You can catch yourself when you do training like this to learn, wait a second, no, we're not going to do that right now. We're going to stop that right now. And we're going to gently shift into, hey, even though I made that mistake, I did about 100 things really well today. Or even though I forgot the lunchbox, I know how to take care of myself or whatever it is. Is this making sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things I like to do is I call it ridiculously over the top self-talk. I do this myself. I share it with my clients. So let's say that you are saying to yourself, "Oh, I'm a failure. I can't do anything right." A lot of times the advice will be to be kind of neutral and be like, "I'm doing the best I can. I'm as worthy as anyone else." And to me, that doesn't work. It's too
Mm.
flat. I need to go like completely over the top. So I'll go until it's funny. So like for example, for me, a lot of times it comes up around time. Like I don't have enough time. I'm not doing enough, that kind of stuff. So let's say I'm out running errands and I'm like, I'm a failure. I'm not doing everything. I'll say stop. And then I'll be like, Michelle, you just absolutely crushed that trip to the grocery store. Like you are killing it as a mom. You're probably the best mom I've ever
I
seen.
mean, yeah,
Like
let's face it.
you are, I mean, there is no better. You are top notch. No one has ever grocery shopped as well as you have. No one has ever gone through car line as spectacularly as you have. And I'll just
Yes.
keep going until it makes me laugh.
That's really funny.
And I'll do that with my therapy clients too. And I'll be like, no, keep going, more, more, more until it makes them laugh. And
Yeah.
it's not toxic positivity. Some people are like, well, aren't you just pretending? No, we are interrupting that negative cognition and we're doing it in
Yeah.
a way that it makes us laugh. So it breaks that old pattern in our brains. So I'm a fan of ridiculously over the top self-talk.
I love that. It's actually the complete opposite of what I teach because I definitely teach not to do like I not to not do that, but I never thought of it that way. I'm always like, you don't have to be crazy because for a lot of people who do struggle with like self-esteem or you're really
Mhm.
stuck in those kind of ways, it's hard to even shift out of the negative to get anything positive. So then to I feel like you have to go to this extreme can feel really kind of defeating, like there's no way I can do that. It doesn't feel
Yeah. Well,
palatable to
it's not a
them.
have to. It's just fun. I think it's just
Yeah.
fun,
No, but
you
I
know?
like it because I think it speaks to this body piece, right? Because then,
Mhm.
so it's a really great nervous system regulation strategy because if you can get yourself all the way down to ridiculousness and you're laughing, laughter is reducing the stress on your nervous system. Like laughing and
Exactly.
smiling is bringing your nervous system back down in that moment. So it's almost
Mhm.
the same as kind of physical activity, right? Like if you were to get up and go up and down the steps or jog around your house or something. So I
Well, it
do like
reminds
it.
me yeah, it reminds me too of another similar exercise, even though it's kind of the opposite, would be to like go to the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Somebody says, "Oh, I'm a failure because I was late picking up my kid." Okay, so, what's that mean? And then you kind of push for, well, they're going, my child's going to be taken away, and then I'm going to be destitute, and
Yeah.
then I'm um, going to lose my job, and then, you just take it to the extreme where you're like living in a van by the river Chris
Yes.
with Chris Farley. Like,
Yes.
you know, it's same idea, like, take it to just the absolute extremes, and that helps you
Hmm.
see the ridiculous of it and say, "Okay, maybe I'm somewhere in the middle. Maybe I'm
Yeah, I
not the
like that a
greatest
lot.
mom that ever lived. Maybe I'm not in a van by the river. Maybe
Right.
I'm just a human, like, doing the best I can."
Yeah, I really like that a lot. And I think, not exactly, but I feel like I've seen this happen in work with clients where, you can, not that, I mean, I've kind of allowed, and like this is actually a strategy in EMDR, right? Like we can get when we're doing like the fear and phobia protocol, but like I've done some of that work with people where I just keep asking them a question or I keep, and then they will automatically kind of themselves get to that place where like, yeah, I mean, I probably can just like go buy the car. Like it's probably going to be fine. Like I actually do know I've done this before. Like they can almost get there themselves,
Mm.
which is pretty cool. Like then you're like, wow, like you just help them kind of see it for themselves, which is wild. Um, and I think this is so important because after you stay sober for a little while, you are, I mean, in the beginning, the pink cloud and all the fun thing. I mean, it's not fun always, but like the fellowship, whatever it is around you, like people tend to be a lot of times people are kind of doting on you. It's like this whole new lifestyle. You feel good, you're starting to look good, maybe you lose weight, your skin is glowing. There's all these kind of like other benefits to not drinking and using, and that continues, right? Because now your relationships are getting better and um you know, your health is getting better, maybe you've gotten a new job or you've gotten out of a bad relationship. But, with time, we settle in, right? Like we kind of settle into the life. This is my new life. And yes, it's awesome and stuff. And then we do start to get kind of hit with some of the realities of life, like we were describing before. And what I was gonna ask is if maybe you would be willing to like let's just get real gritty here, like if there's like a personal story at a level that you're willing to share where you can kind of feel like okay, like this actually, here I'm floating along, I'm doing all these things, and then like this thing happens and you almost don't feel like it's even possible. Like I don't know about you, but like after you stay sober for kind of a while, for me anyway, like run my life in a kind of, I've done a lot of EMDR. I've done a lot of really great recovery work. I work in recovery every day. I have these kids but then like a thing will come up, like like for me, it's always around the kids, generally speaking. Not much else bothers me, but it's almost always around something with my children.
Mm.
And so that will happen. And it's like so unexpected. Cause I'm like, I'm not used to this. Like I'm not used to these kind of feelings ever coming in. I'm not used to feeling like I want to numb out. I don't want to drink or use, but I do want to escape this. Like
Mm-hmm.
I do not like this at all. I
Mm-hmm.
want to get out. Um, and like, so it kind of feels like almost new. Like, so I'm just curious, like if we, if there's something like for that for you, when that's
Mm-hmm.
happened, and it's like, wow, it's like surprising, right?
Well, this okay, disclaimer. I think this is going to sound messed up. I think some people listening are going to be like, "Wow, this lady's messed up." Or
Yes, love that.
maybe some people will relate to it, but I'm usually not surprised. I feel like maybe I am kind of a fatalist. I'm like, of course we got in a car accident. Of course I got cancer. I always knew was going to get cancer. I always knew I was going to be an alcoholic. Um,
I'm not saying about the experiences because I'm not surprised by any of the experiences
yeah,
ever.
anything
I'm not
bad that happens,
experienced.
I'm like, of course.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying like, of course, but I'm always like, well, sure. Yeah. Like, well, why not? That's my thing. Like,
Yeah,
why wouldn't
yeah.
that happen? But I'm saying where we get I get, and I have been in the past, surprised by the
Mm,
overwhelm of the feelings that come from those experiences. That's what I think.
mm-hmm.
It's
Oh, I
like
see.
surprising. Like, the thing isn't surprising, but you're like, oh shit. Like, wow. Like, I don't even remember how to do this. So
Mm-hmm.
it's so foreign.
Yeah. And that's where that tuning back in with the body
Yeah.
comes in for me because really there's only a couple things that I usually feel. Um, it's either anxiety
Yeah.
or it's sadness or it's anger. And like they feel different in my body and old stuff versus new stuff feels different in my body. So that's the first thing I do is tune in and say, what am I physically feeling in my body?
Yeah.
And it makes it easier because when you tune in with it, it dissipates so much faster than when you try to run away with it. So I just try to lean in and let myself feel the thing,
Yeah. That's
you know?
awesome. I know. I agree with that. And sometimes that's super painful, and
Mhm.
it might mean you're a couple days you're just kind of crying it out or you're just
Mhm.
allowing it. And it's actually really freeing on the other side. But
Mhm.
it is really painful and just like kind of ugly in the middle of it where you're just like, I need
Mhm.
to just be mad about this for a little while.
Well, Yeah, and you know what's tough too is like I know we both are business owners, we're professionals. Like you don't have most of us, I don't have time to just curl up and cry for a month.
Yeah.
Like back in May, my grandmother passed away, and
Yeah.
my grandmother and I were extremely close. I was an only grandchild, so not only am I an only child, my dad's an only child.
Oh, wow.
He passed away a couple years ago. She passed away in May.
Okay.
I was her caregiver. I was taking care of her from Ohio to Florida. I eventually moved her up here to Ohio to be closer. I was her power of attorney. I was her decision maker. Um, it was incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
And she passed away in May, and it's like, but life doesn't stop, you know? Maybe it can stop for a day or two while you
Yeah.
take care of yourself, but guess what? You still have to pay bills. You still have to go to
Hmm.
work. And so
True.
that's one of the hardest parts for me is how do you reconcile when something really big is happening and you still have to go through the mundane daily routine.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And
That's one
that's
of the weirdest
actually,
things
it
about
is
being a
the
human.
weirdest thing about, that's one of the weirdest things. And I hear a lot of people share that about, like, particularly around loss, but I think
Hmm.
it can be with anything that we're going through. But I think what you just said is so important. And I want to highlight too, one of the reasons why it's so important, and it's a huge part of my work and in my court, like it's the whole second module of my program, right, with clients, is to have the mundane routines of daily routines that you never deviate from, right? That you wake up at the same time every day, you do these five things in the morning, then you go about your day, and at night you do these five things, and like every day you do those things, and then in between there might be a few other things that you typically do, because it becomes so predictable, and you've now trained your brain that you're trustworthy, right? That you can follow, you say you're going to do a thing and then you do it, right? So over time your brain begins to learn, oh, Shelby says means what she says, I can trust her. So then that means whenever you enter in a new thing, you're like, oh, I'm going to add this new thing to my routine. It doesn't go immediately, no, you're not. You're not going to do that. I mean, it says, yeah, she's going to do that. But when the things happen, right? When we're in the mess, when we're in the muck, that messy, sticky middle, I always say that
Hmm.
our brain already programmed when you do that work consistently over time, that it knows exactly how to kind of fall in line. So that predictability brings you and your nervous system, your body, a sense of peace for
Hmm.
a period of time, right? And like you can go to bed and you can know that when you wake up, you will do this, and maybe it's some
Absolutely.
periods of time, or maybe you're on vacation or you're traveling to help your grandma or whatever. You don't do every single thing, but you do most of it, you do parts of
Hmm.
it. And so even in the mess, there's like this peace because you've created stability in your body and in your mind that says, these are the things that I
Hmm.
always do. I know that this sucks. I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to get up and I'm going to do these things. It's like it
Yeah.
gives you something to latch on to.
Yes. In fact, my internship was at a private practice, and there was kind of a high profile thing that happened that involved the death of a child.
Yeah.
Um, so, without getting into any more detail about that, one of the things that I learned is for children, when there's a traumatic event or a loss, one of the best things that you can do for children is get them up, get them dressed, send
Yeah.
them to school,
Yeah.
keep them on the routine as much as possible.
Exactly.
And same for us. Like, yeah, we have
Mhm.
to let some things go to take care of ourselves or be
Yeah.
there for our families, but yeah, if we let the whole routine go, which I've certainly done at points in my life, that's when I've really got a big hole to crawl out of
I
later.
agree with you. I agree with you.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that we don't honor and respect ourselves or our need for rest, or that we do need time off sometimes. It doesn't mean any I was just thinking specifically about, like, I don't know about you, but I've had clients in my practice before where they're going through a thing, and sometimes it's physical, sometimes mental health, sometimes it's both or whatever, and they're just whatever, they're having a time, and then they kind of apply for like a short-term disability, right?
Mhm.
So from their work, right? Because they think they need time off. Well, mostly they need to be paid, right? And they don't have enough leave. And totally
Yeah.
get it. I'm not against it or disparaging any of it. But sometimes I've had the experience where I've really been working with somebody. And I'm like, I know, and it's hard to express these things in this way, but I think it's so valuable to what we're saying is I know this is a really hard time for you and we go through the things and what have you done and what's happening and okay, great, you're taking care of that and like and I'll say things like I think you need to get back to work.
Hmm.
Like I really think, like another month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 60 days of like not working is really not going to provide you with any kind of help at all. And
Right.
also now you have no money. So like you're poor, if
I
you're
have
if you're
no
already
money.
struggling with finances,
Hmm.
you don't have any, you're broke and like you need to get back to work.
And
Um,
if you have any depression,
yeah.
nothing feeds depression like laying around on the couch.
Right. And so like it doesn't feel better. We think that's the solution, but it's
Hmm.
not. So what I always say is get yourself back to in the past. Sometimes I have had to say like I think you should get back to work. No time like the present.
Hmm.
And then everything else that's around you that is creating stress or causing problems needs to
Hmm.
go. Right? Like so if you
Yes.
have a thing in your life that's like a child or a parent or some other outside situation that's happening or your home is a mess, whatever,
Hmm.
that stuff has to be put to the side, because then you can work that in eventually, but you got to get yourself on a regular routine.
Although I will say sometimes addressing those things is the best thing. Like
I
one of the
agree.
things I do for myself, I call it restoring order. So when I feel overwhelmed, I will go through my calendar. I'll make sure everything is on my calendar. We were just talking about like messy schedules, how
Yes.
how it's been messy lately with the Zooms and everything.
Yeah.
And so I'll make sure my calendar's in order. Everything's on my calendar. I'll make sure all my bills are paid. My piles of paper are gone through. Um, I just go through and restore order to my life,
Yeah.
and I
I think so
feel
too.
better. So
No, I
sometimes
think
it
so too.
is
Because and when
cleaning the kitchen.
our outside environments
Uh-huh.
are clean and restored, then it helps with our insides. It's really tough to get one or the other if one of them is off whack. So it's not that wasn't a be
Hmm.
all end all for everybody's situation. I was just
Yeah.
saying that a lot of times if I feel like the person is capable, but they are wavering or they're feeling like they just need to be all, I'm kind of like
Hmm.
feel like it might be the best thing.
Well,
So
it's discerning, right? It's
yeah,
what do you need most right now?
right,
It's like, do you need a nap or a 12-step meeting? Do you
right,
need to
right.
meditate or clean your kitchen? Like there are no wrong answers. It's just what you
Yes.
need in that moment.
I love that so much. It's like the next right thing, right? Just check. I totally agree with
Yeah,
that. What do you need right now?
exactly.
What can you do right now? Or I
Yes.
always say to people, "Well, how can I help you right now?" And a lot of times they'll be like, "You can't. There's nothing you can do." Okay, that's cool too. But at least you've asked, and it might help them trigger into like, "Oh, okay, I need to get my house in order.
Yeah.
I
And you
need
know
to
what?
get my
Sometimes
calendar."
it might be, well, I think I need a whole new career. Like it could be
You're like,
enormous,
"Whoa."
or it could be, I think I need a glass of water. Like,
Exactly. I might be thirsty. Let's take the easier, softer way here, okay? Have you had a
yes, have the
snack?
glass of water first. Yes,
Yeah.
have that
How much
first.
protein have you had today? Oh man, Michelle, this is so great. I was like had 5 more questions I could ask you, and I know we're running out of time. I want to make sure you give people a chance to hear a little bit more about exactly what you are kind of up to lately for work, and then
Yeah.
how people can get a hold of you if they want to.
Absolutely. Well, I have two businesses. One is a therapy practice, and I offer EMDR intensive.
Hmm.
And those are 3 to 6 hour sessions of accelerated EMDR. And I'm in Ohio. So that is one way that I love to work. And that's actually the only way that I'm accepting new clients right now is for intensives. And then I also have my second business, which is my consulting business, where I help other therapists diversify their income streams and become continuing education providers so that they can really use their expertise to develop another income stream. One of the ways that I manage my own stress level is I've quickly found I can't do a caseload of like 30 one-on-one
Yeah,
clients and be a
no,
I no, I am just fried. I'm not a good therapist at
I
that
can't.
point. No. So what I have done is I keep a very small caseload, and I also have a second business where I do teaching and consulting, and
Yeah.
I love it. It's been a good balance for me.
I love that.
So,
I feel this exact same way. 16 to 20 clients is basically my max for sure right now. And I've been kind of living on the edge of that higher end
mhm,
lately, and I can feel it. I can feel like the time stress, like just getting my notes
mhm,
done, like the overload on my system. So for sure we need to figure out what is the best thing for us, and there's no wrong answer.
absolutely.
Everybody's tolerance level is different. And then our
Yeah.
outside lives are different. I still have one kid at home. I have
Mhm,
two in college that I love to visit. I have a husband.
mhm.
So like everybody's different, but you got to know
Everybody's
what's right for
different.
you. I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
found that for me, I can be a really good therapist for about 3 people a
Yeah,
day.
I
And
love
that
it.
is not, you cannot make a living on 3 people a day. So I've got to
Amen,
have
sister.
other income stream. Yeah.
Amen. I get
So
it.
that, and that's actually how we met, was in that world of
Yes.
other income streams and, all the fun things we're doing, like you're doing your neurofeedback, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So people can find me. The easiest way is just find me on my consulting page because it's just mrisser.com.
Okay.
I'm also on Instagram, so please follow me on Instagram. And I share mental health content and just funny stuff and encouraging stuff. And so please follow me over there. And that's
You got it.
Michelle_Risser on Instagram.
Perfect. They're linked below in the show notes, and everybody can find you in those places. Please go find her, follow her, give her some love, and make sure you share this episode with your friends if you like what we're talking about. Maybe you have other people in your life who might want to learn how to regulate their emotions and their nervous systems and really need to get in touch with their bodies. I mean, I think the best way that all of us can help each other is by sharing the resources that we come across. Like this is what worked for me, or hey, I listened to this thing, or I read this book, and that's really how it works. So thank you so much for your time and for
You're
sharing it with
so
us. And I'm
welcome.
so excited. I know our paths will cross again. We've
Oh,
kind of
yes,
started working together a little bit, and I'm
definitely.
excited about what might come of that. And just thank you again for your time.
You're so welcome. This has been